In the quiet of a brisk October morning in 1960, liquid oxygen bathes a launch pad in an ominous fog. The Soviet Union is poised to take a giant leap ahead in the burgeoning space race. Deep in the steppes of Kazakhstan, hundreds of miles from civilization, and a world away from Western eyes, a powerful new rocket points skyward. 2 previous endeavors have failed. They are determined to make it work now, at any expense. The launch of Sputnik in 1957 had kicked off a feverish era of space exploration. While the Americans struggled with their Vanguard rockets, the Soviets sent a dog named Laika into orbit. Their Luna probes dazzled the world, hitting the moon in September of 1959, then taking photographs of the dark side a month later. The U.S. had successes with Explorer and Ranger, but the Soviets were clearly leading the pack, and by long strides. Even as the rocket readied for takeoff, Premier Nikita Khrushchev was in New York for a United Nations meeting, anxious to gloat about another Soviet success while on American soil. Back in Kazakhstan, the pressure was on to launch now, no matter what. During the countdown, a malfunction was discovered. Normally, this would result in a postponement, but not on this day. Fuel surged through the rocket boosters. Minutes later, the compound exploded into an inferno that would claim nearly 200 lives. The world was left with hearsay, rumor, and speculation. Until now. Unexplained deaths, harrowing encounters in space, phenomena that puzzled the world for decades. These are the files long hidden behind the impenetrable seal of the Iron Curtain. Today, we can finally explore those hidden vaults, bringing to light the darkest mysteries of the secret Russian space program.
Knowledge TV Retro, brought to you by Jones International University, the first fully online accredited university. Change your life for the better on your schedule. 8-week classes begin next month. Visit jiu.edu to find out more.
From the beginning, the Soviets and Americans amazed the world with their stellar achievements. But that glory has been marred by disaster. Time and time again, the deadly matrix of politics, human nature, and destiny has shattered the myth of technological perfection. While rocket power has boosted humanity to new heights, its searing flames remind us that in the perilous pursuit of outer space, false starts are often fatal. The environment of space is even less forgiving. The smallest miscalculation can boil blood in minutes, or leave a spacecraft and its passengers marooned in orbit as life slowly trickles away. 1967. In the hasty race to beat each other to the moon, someone was bound to make a mistake, a deadly one. The Americans would misstep with the fiery deaths of the Apollo 1 astronauts. Then the Soviets, in their rush to the moon, would follow with the first in-flight death of a cosmonaut. It wouldn't be their only taste of tragedy and regret. Violent explosions on the launch pad, fatal miscalculations, and crucial equipment failures. The margin between life and death can be harrowingly thin. Sometimes fate smiles. Other times, it turns a blind eye. True stories, like that of the Soviets' deadliest disaster, are finally being pieced together. The missile poised in the launch pad that pivotal day in October 1960 was the R-16 ICBM. the pet project of Mikhail Kuzmich Yangel. It was a rocket designed to deliver deadly nuclear warheads to the U.S. This would be Yangel's first test at a newly constructed launch pad at Baikonur, and it was scheduled for the anniversary of the Great October Revolution. Marshal Nijelin was the commander-in-chief of the Strategic Missile Forces. He would conduct the test himself. Many of the top military officers and rocket designers were there to watch the historic launch. But the launch was off to a disappointing start. An electrical problem threatened to abort the entire mission. Protocol demanded that technicians deactivate the boosters and drain the fuel. But that would mean weeks of delay. For Nijelin and the prestige this launch represented, failure was not an option. Sergei Khrushchev learned of the classified disaster from his father, former Premier Nikita Khrushchev.
But because they thought that they saved the marshal, who was the head of the commission, he took his chair and sit under the missile. And all other people gathered around the missile, which was full, which is crazy.
Indeed, Marshal Nijelin's confidence was in vain. As engineers tried to fix the problem, they accidentally triggered the ignition sequence.
The engine began to work. Of course, it was just burned the first stage, and 150 or 160 tons of all this stuff just dropped down, and it began the fire, and they burned everything there.
Within seconds, the pad was a towering inferno. What you are seeing is that actual disaster. 126 people died instantly, including Nijelin, charred beyond recognition. 50 more would die later from their injuries. The world's greatest single missile catastrophe. While burning victims tried and failed to make their way out of the raging inferno, others walked directly into its burning center. They weren't going in to save their comrades. What they were after was of much higher priority. They risked their lives to preserve this flaming box. What secrets that box contained may someday also come to light. Until that day, it remains yet another of the unexplained mysteries that comprise the Soviet space archives. Nothing in the known annals of space history matches the Nijelin catastrophe in terms of life lost. But it was hardly their only disaster. In 1969, the Soviets prepared to launch their second generation of Mars probes. The United States had edged ahead in the race to the moon, so a successful Mars launch would be an appropriate reply. These probes were to be carried by the powerful new Proton booster, which had 3 times the thrust of the earlier booster and 3 times the troubles. Though its designers gave it only a 50-50 chance of success, political forces deemed it worth the risk. None of the 3 launches were successful, but the attempt you are witnessing nearly turned fatal. Luckily, the rocket crashed on an uninhabited area of the base. This disaster was preserved on film. The legacies of countless others have evaporated as quickly as the smoke that swirled around their burning wreckage. Like the launch fire at Plesetsk in March 1980, which to this day remains shrouded in mystery. Film of the blast and fire were destroyed, and no photography was permitted at the funerals of those who died. For Alexander Kosuk, the experience is permanently seared into his memory. Half an hour before the launch, he descended these stairs to an underground bunker. The Soviets had been attempting to launch a spy satellite when an oxygen leak was discovered. Rather than follow safety procedure, An oily rag was used to temporarily stop the leak. It ignited almost immediately.
And at that time, there was a big blast. The bunker was full of flame and hot gas.